Port Vale then are through to the next round. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia will be awarded the 2034 World Cup. This is what Australia's football CEO, James Johnson, had to say about withdrawing their bid. Saudi's a strong bid. They have a lot of resources, and not just for the 2034 World Cup. They are disrupting European football, paying higher dollars. This is a disruption in the market, and that is what positions Saudi in a strong way. From the government top down, they are prioritising investment in football. That is difficult to compete with. For more on this, let's welcome in, shall we? Gab Marcotti joins us. Gab, is this a surprise?
I think most would say it's not a surprise. I don't think it was a mystery that Saudi was probably the preferred bid in some quarters. There was talk, because if you remember, FIFA had said that they'd introduced this principle of regional rotation where, by fudging a little bit, to be fair, they said, oh, look, North America gets 2026, and then 2030 goes to Europe, Spain and Portugal, plus Africa and Morocco. Plus, if we tack on those 3 games in South America, we can say it goes to South America as well. Well, that leaves Asia and Oceania to go bid for 2034. In Oceania, it's 11 countries with a total population of less than 10 million. More than half of them live in New Zealand, so obviously they weren't going to figure. But there was a sense, could Australia maybe working with Indonesia, with some of their neighbors, maybe New Zealand as well, could they come together with an alternate bid? In the end, it would have been Australia that would have had to do the heavy lifting here. And they looked at the numbers and they figured it just wasn't going to work.
So are we going to have another Winter World Cup, Gab?
That's one of many things TBD. And by the way, I should point out that FIFA has come out and said, look, just because there's one bidder, Saudi Arabia, and same goes for 2030 as well, doesn't mean these countries are definitely going to get the World Cup, because they still need to submit their tender, and they still have a process. Process does include human rights. Human Rights Watch came out and said, well, if Saudi gets it, you're violating FIFA's own rules. So that's all TBD. Now, obviously, the clock is ticking. The Congress will vote on this in May when they meet, and if they pass the test, then when there's only one name on the ballot, it's kind of hard to return a blank sheet of paper.
This is what Amnesty International came out and said about the possibility of Saudi Arabia hosting the World Cup in 2034, saying human rights commitments must be agreed with potential hosts before final decisions on holding the tournament are made. The best chance for FIFA to obtain binding guarantees to protect workers' rights, ensure freedom of expression and prevent discrimination linked to the World Cup is during the host selection process, not after the hosts have been confirmed and tournament preparation has begun. How much will that statement fall on deaf ears, Gab?
Look, this part really is up to FIFA, and I know people are going to be cynical about this, right? But they have not been approved. Those tests that they're talking about, they will have to go through them. Will they just be waved through? I don't know. I'm not sure. And I think, some people would argue that Saudi Arabia in 2034 isn't going to be Saudi Arabia today, that, migrant workers certainly less of an issue in Saudi because they have a large population, unlike, say, Qatar, for example. But obviously, in terms of freedom of expression, in terms of women's rights, in terms of LGBTQ rights, they're certainly not getting high marks from Amnesty. I think the broader thing here, and I do have a column coming out on this week, is that the way FIFA is set up now, they get more than 95% of their revenue from the World Cup. The World Cup has to be a lucrative event for them. Qatar spent in excess of $220 million on their World Cup, which is about 18 times more than Russia spent 4 years earlier, and obviously Russia, a much bigger country. They've painted themselves in a corner where I think it's hard to imagine any World Cup that's not held in North America, Europe, or Asia, simply because that's where the money is, that's where the sponsors are. So, once you say it's going to be in Asia and I need to do this because I need to generate all this money so that I can then give it to my member associations so that the member associations can A, develop football, and B, let's face it, vote for me again if I continue to deliver the money for them. It's hard to see how you break that cycle. And so when you've got somebody, waving huge checkbooks, the way Saudi have done of late, it's really hard, I think, for the FIFA member nations and the FIFA Congress. There's more than 200 of them. They're the ones who decide. It's going to be really hard, I think, for them to say no.